never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Men Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Men Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force of Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Welcome to the show. We had a terrible tragedy. I didn't talk about it last week, but now I will. On the 15th of February, Nicholas Cruz, a 19-year-old gentleman in Florida, Broward County, Florida, took a rifle into a school and killed 17 people in a mass shooting. That to me is horrific, as it is for anyone else. The idea that someone could walk in. Now, he's 19 years old, so he's old enough to have graduated, but more to the point, he had already been, expelled. He had no business on school grounds, put it that way. But not only did he not have business on school grounds, not being a student, not being in any other way connected to the school, he was able to walk in with a weapon and be able to address a number of people and kill 17 of them. This is a problem. And here's one of the things that I found that was kind of I just called it kind of like a build-up to this massacre, and it's just strange to me.
New accounts of missed opportunities to stop the Florida shooter at the scene and long before he got there are compounding the agony of victims' families. CNN has reviewed a transcript of a call the FBI received in January of this year, warning that Nicholas shooter, "I know he's going to explode." The caller, who appears to know Cruz well, tells the FBI tip line, quote, "I just think about, getting into a school and just shooting the place up." The caller tells the FBI, quote, he had pulled a rifle on his mother and says, quote, "On the Instagram, he says, I want to kill people."
Who is known to students as a danger to shoot people.
Florida Governor Rick Scott is so angry about the missed tip, he has called for the resignation of FBI Director Christopher Wray. In a statement last week, Wray apologized that the tip was never given to the FBI's Miami field office, and he called for a full investigation. Now, 2 other missed warnings are also under police review. A call to police last November that Cruz could be a school shooter in the making, and someone flagging to police in 2016 that Cruz had posted on Instagram he planned to, quote, shoot up the school. Newly released 911 calls also show that in November, Nicholas Cruz got into a fight with a family that took him in after his mother died. At the time, Cruz blamed his host family's son.
I kind of got mad and I started punching walls and stuff, and then a kid came at me and threw me on the ground. And he started attacking me and he kicked me out of the house and he said he was going to gut me.
But the host family tells 911 their son was the victim.
And I punched him in the face,
and he kind of holds him just so he doesn't punch and put him down, but he kept punching, and my son threw him out. He's going to get his weapon at Dick's, I know that right now. Now he's pissed off, so he's going to get the gun.
All of this comes as police are under new scrutiny about how they responded the day of the shooting and whether Cruz could have been stopped earlier in his rampage. Sources in Coral Springs, Florida tell CNN when Coral Springs police officers arrived at the high school, they were surprised and upset to see that armed school resource officer Deputy Scott Peterson and 3 other Broward County Sheriff's deputies were outside the school and hadn't gone in yet. The sources say the Broward deputies didn't appear to join the Coral Springs officers when they went in, but they caution evidence is still being reviewed. The Broward County Sheriff's Office hasn't yet responded, but Broward Sheriff Scott Israel expressed shame at Deputy Peterson's alleged inaction.
Devastated, sick to my stomach. There are no words. I mean, these families lost their children.
Sheriff Israel said Deputy Peterson was outside the school for 4 minutes while Cruz was firing inside.
4 minutes is a lot of time for someone armed with this type of weapon and magazines to kill people. And to hold and do nothing for 4 minutes, absent an order from the chain of command to do so, is unthinkable.
What we don't know yet is Scott Peterson's own side of the story. CNN has tried various ways of reaching former Deputy Peterson. We've not been able to make contact with him. Brian Todd, CNN, Washington.
Let me start with a real question here. Please explain to me what laws you can put in place to make police officers and FBI agents do their jobs. Answer me that one. Because I am going to talk in the next segment about, all this terrible things that we're trying to do with guns. But if you look at this, you knew, the whole community knew, including law enforcement, that this dude was trouble. Time magazine, Time.com, their online version of the magazine, put out a kind of timeline on what they knew as of the 17th of February. On September 24th of 2017, the FBI said it was notified about a comment on YouTube from someone with the username Nicholas Cruz, happens to be the shooter's name. The comment said, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." You don't look into that? You don't look into that. January 5th, 2018, tip about the potential for a school shooting. The FBI admitted agents received a tip in January from someone who was close to Nicholas Cruz, giving information on his gun ownership, desire to kill people, erratic behavior, and disturbing social media posts, as well as the potential of him conducting a school shooting. The FBI said the tip should have been assessed as a potential threat to life and forwarded to the Miami field office, but it wasn't. It wasn't. Police were called to the Cruz's home 39 times. Police responded to Cruz's house 39 different times over 7 years. Over 7 years? According to documents obtained by CNN. There is no information, however, on whether those calls to police were made in relation to Nicholas Cruz. What you think? The FBI dropped the ball? Everybody's dropping the ball. It's amazing how many times the ball got dropped. And on the 25th of February, we have the governor calling for an investigation of what went wrong with the sheriffs.
According to Coral Springs police officers, several Broward Sheriff's deputies waited outside the building at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High rather than rushing in as the killer was gunning down school children. An estimated 2 other deputies stood outside the school building while Coral Springs officers went in. Sheriff Scott Israel told the Sun-Sentinel on Friday that his agency will investigate the claims. Deputy Scott Peterson, the officer assigned to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, resigned Thursday while under investigation for failing to enter the building as shooter Nicholas Cruz opened fire and killed 17 people. The Coral Springs city manager angrily confronted Israel the day after the shooting about the deputy's response, according to South Florida Sun-Sentinel's sources. Israel said the sheriff's office is making plans to interview the Coral Springs police officers who lodged the complaint. Israel said, "If we find out, as we did with Peterson, that our deputies made mistakes and didn't go in, I'll handle it like I always have. I'll handle any violations of policy or procedures or whatever accordingly. Asked how he feels about such an accusation being leveled against his deputies, Israel said, "Being in police work as long as I have, I've seen allegations that end up being accurate and allegations that end up being inaccurate. I don't really have an opinion on allegations. I deal with facts. We'll want to see where the facts are, and we'll go from there." Sergeant Carla Kimutek stated that any actions or inactions that negatively affected the response will be investigated thoroughly and the information released officially. There were countless deputies and officers who responded on that fateful day from multiple jurisdictions, whose actions were nothing short of heroic. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High is in Parkland, where police officers are provided by the sheriff's office.
Multiple deputies. They're going after this guy Peterson, and he has resigned. But in both of the clips I played, you have multiple deputies who were standing outside while the shooting was going on inside. I'm not exactly sure how you legislate bravery. I'm not sure how you legislate initiative. I don't know how you force the FBI and local law enforcement to follow their own procedures about what to do when the community is telling you, we have a problem child here and he's likely to kill someone. I'm as big a defender of anybody's rights as you can find. However, if everyone, or not everyone, if you have multiple members of a community over several months telling you something's going on, and as law enforcement you've been called to this location where this problem child is 39 times in the last 7 years, oh my gosh. At some point, if you're going to do something that resembles investigative work, police work, you got to have a conversation with this kid. And they didn't. Now, there's no way to be absolutely certain that had they had the conversation, they would have stopped him. You can't say that. But I'd feel a lot better if they had, because I tend to think that they might have stopped him. But I'm not so sure that the sheriff thinks that. He had an encounter with Jake Tapper on one of the Sunday shows, and he thinks he's doing great.
Is a crime.
On November 30th, fewer than 3 months ago, your office received a call from a tipster explicitly saying that the Cruz could be a, quote, school shooter in the making. According to notes released on that call, no report was even initiated. At this point, sir, do you understand how the public, seeing red flag after red flag after red flag, warning after warning after warning, they hear that your office didn't even initiate a report when they got a call saying that this guy could be a school shooter in the making? How could there not even be a report on this one?
Well, if that's accurate, Jake, there needed to be a report, and that's what we're looking into, that a report needed to be completed. It needed to be forwarded to our either Homeland Security or Violent Crimes Unit, and they would have followed up on it.
That's from your notes. That's from notes released by your office. I'm not making this up. This is from Broward.
No, and that's what the officer who handled that is on restrictive duty, and that's an active internal investigation, and we are looking into it. I can't tell you, I can't predict how an investigation is going, but I've exercised my due diligence. I've led this county proudly, as I always have. We have restricted that deputy as we look into it. Their deputies make mistakes, police officers make mistakes, we all make mistakes, but it's not the responsibility of the general or the president if you have a deserter. You look into this, we're looking into this aggressively, and we'll take care of it, and justice will be served.
Are you really not taking any responsibility for the multiple red flags that were brought to the attention of the Broward Sheriff's Office about this shooter before the incident, whether it was people near him, close to him, calling the police on him?
Jake, I can only take responsibility for what I about. I exercise as my due diligence. I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership?
I've worked. Yes, Jake. There's a lot of things we've done throughout. This is you don't measure a person's leadership by a deputy not going into these deputies received the training they needed.
Maybe you measure somebody's leadership by whether or not they protect the community. In this case, you've listed 23 incidents before the shooting involving the shooter, and still nothing was done to keep guns out of his hands, to make sure that the school was protected, to make sure you were keeping an eye on him. Your deputy at the school failed. I don't understand how you can sit there and claim amazing leadership.
Jake, on 16 of those cases, our deputies did everything right. Our deputies have done amazing things. We've taken this, in the 5 years I've been sheriff, we've taken the Broward Sheriff's Office to a new level. I work with some of the bravest people I've ever met. One person, at this point, one person didn't do what he should have done. It's horrific. The victims here, the families, I pray for them every night. It makes me sick to my stomach that we had a deputy that didn't go in, because I know if I was there, if I was on that wall, I would have been the first in, along with so many of the other people. I think there are a lot of people, sir, who think that they're...
I'm stupefied by this. 23 occasions, and what the sheriff says, well, on 16 of them, we did exactly what we were supposed to do. So that means on 7 of them you screwed the pooch, and 17 people are dead. All of our deputies, they're doing amazing things, and 17 kids are dead. I provided amazing leadership, and you shouldn't judge me because one guy didn't go in. It looks like there were 3 that didn't go in. What part of their training did you oversee or put in place that made them think that in an active shooter situation that it's okay not to go in, that it's okay to hesitate? How is that not reflecting your leadership? And oh, by the way, let's get back to a very simple question. In all the things that you would want to fix about this situation, name where another law would have made a bit of difference. You can't. Because all the policies, all the procedures, all the regulations were already in place, and those who are counted as professionals to handle these things in a certain way failed. They failed to do it. What is it that you want anyone else to try to come up with? This is a tragedy. But this was a tragedy that people saw coming and did not do what they could have done to address it. That's how school shootings happen in this case. And you need to go back and look at some of the others and say, how many signs and signals were given off and how many were overlooked? In this case, 2 tips to the FBI, 23 calls to the sheriff's office, and almost a third of those were botched. That's how you got a school shooting in this case. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Following on, now that we understand that the school shooting that happened in Florida likely had more to do with a failure of the FBI, a failure of local law enforcement, and to be honest, a failure of the local school system. You guys knew who this dude... How does this guy even get on campus? He was expelled. He had no business at the school. How is it he walks on campus and nobody knows? How does he walk on campus, not a student, with a gun, and no one recognizes this? Really? That's interesting. What kind of campus do they have? Where I live, I can't even walk into the school without going through. It's really not that easy. But never mind. After we had the tragedy, the media wasted little time, particularly CNN, in orchestrating an event. Not to talk about what happened, but to put pressure on people to change laws. Is there anything wrong with advocating for people to advocate for that? No. But if you watch that event, and I'm going to play a couple of clips from it, you will get an overall tone that the news organization was not necessarily playing things down the middle. Let's start with the grieving father, and I almost want to put air quotes around grieving, because this is how his interaction with Marco Rubio, who also attended the event, went down.
I want to like you. Here's the problem. And I'm a brutally honest person, so I'm just going to say it up front.
Yes, sir.
When I like you, you know it, and when I'm pissed at you, you know it. Your comments this week and those of our president have been pathetically weak. You and I are now eye to eye, because I want to like you. Look at me and tell me guns were the factor in the hunting of our kids in this school this week. And look at me and tell me you accept it and you will work with us to do something about guns.
Fred, I'm not, first of all, let me explain what I said this week, and I'll repeat it. I'll repeat what I said. And what I said, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to talk about guns, and we're going to talk about what I said this week. And here's what I said. I said that the problems that we are facing...
Let him speak. I think we need to hear it.
I'm saying that the problems that we're facing here today cannot be solved by gun laws alone.
Guns the factor in the hunting of our kids.
They were. And here's
it's the weapon of choice. Can you say that?
I support moving forward on that initiative and making it widely available for everyone around the country. Now, I think what you're asking about is the assault weapons ban.
Yes, sir.
So let me be honest with you about that one. If I believed that that law would have prevented this from happening, I would support it. But I want to explain to you why it would not.
Senator Rubio, my daughter, running down the hallway at Marjorie Stoneman and Douglas, was shot in the back with an assault weapon. The weapon of choice.
Yes, sir.
Okay? It is too easy to get. It is a weapon of war. The fact that you can't stand with everybody in this building and say that, I'm sorry.
Sir, I do believe what you're saying is true. But my belief remains that rather than continue to try to chase every loophole that's created, it's why it failed in '94, it's why they're getting around it now in California, it's why how they get around it in New York, is we instead should make sure that dangerous criminals, people that are deranged, cannot buy any gun of any kind. That's what I believe a better answer will be.
Okay. Your answer speaks for itself.
Thank you, Mr. Guttenberg.
His answer didn't speak at all. The problem with Marco Rubio, and here is my take on that, just dealing with Rubio, I now understand why Donald Trump called him small hands. You have a position, but you are so into being liked that you have problem articulating your position, which means you probably shouldn't have showed up at the event in the first place. You should have said you had a scheduling conflict, or just say you're not going to go. Because this was not about policy. He tried to throw in policy toward the end. This wasn't about policy. This is about emotion. For this guy to come up and who talks like that about their daughter who just died? Who's up here? I want you to repeat my talking point from CNN or from whomever gave it to me about guns. You need to repeat my talking point right now so that I can like you? I'm sorry, if my daughter had just gotten killed at a school, the last thing I'm worried about is some politician liking him. I don't care. The other thing, a weapon of war, as though another gun shooting her in the back would not have done more damage. If the kid had walked in there with a .45, it would have put a bigger hole in her than the one she received that killed her. Please tell me what the weapon of peace is. Since you're calling this a weapon of war, what is the weapon of peace? Oh, there was a 1911, was it a 1911 Peacekeeper pistol? But that was a .45 caliber weapon. It kept the peace because when you looked down the barrel of that hole, you didn't have anything to say. Let's move on to the next one. The 17-year-old kid with political savvy beyond his years.
This isn't about red and blue. We can't boo people because they're Democrats and boo people because they're Republicans. Anyone who's willing to show change, no matter where they're from, anybody who's willing to start to make a difference is somebody we need on our side here. And this is about people who are for making a difference to save us and people who are against it and prefer money. So, Senator Rubio, can you tell me right now that you will not accept a single donation from the NRA in the future?
This is about money? Wait a minute, 17 kids are dead. You think this is about a 17-year-old kid who just was a quote-unquote survivor of a school shooting in which 17 children died is saying this is about who's not going to take money? Are you serious? You think he came to that thought all on his lonesome? Not what laws can we form, not what steps can we take, not what can we do immediately to address the situation, but whether or not you're going to take money from a campaign donor. This is nonsense. This is choreographed. And there is reason to think that it is choreographed. There was someone who had planned to be there and who wound up not being there.
Thousands of people made their way to the BB&T Center in Sunrise to take part in this nationally televised town hall.
But one shooting survivor refused to be there. Our Janine Stanwood joins us live now from the BB&T Center to explain that for us tonight. Janine.
Calvin Lurie, you said it. He got dressed. His parents got dressed up. They were looking forward to come here to the BB&T Center. But then he says that after preparing his questions, he says that CNN gave him a scripted question. So he said no way. Other students, however, say that this was an opportunity for the public to know what they've been through.
It's scary. It was really scary.
Jack McLeod is a junior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High and was there when the shots were fired. He says the CNN town hall is another way for the public to see his generation's activism.
I have friends that have already, been at the White House, talked to Donald Trump. I have friends in Tallahassee, so I hope that this is the last time that anybody has to experience this and everybody can feel our pain so that nobody has to experience it firsthand.
I expected to be able to ask my questions and give my opinion on my questions.
But Colton Hobb, a member of the junior ROTC who shielded classmates in the midst of terror, says he did not get to share his experience.
CNN had originally asked me to write a speech and questions, and it ended up being all scripted.
Colton wrote questions about school safety, suggested using veterans as armed school security guards, but claimed CNN wanted him to ask a scripted question instead, so he decided not to go.
I don't think that it's going to get anything accomplished. It's not going to ask the true questions that all the parents and teachers and students have.
And so you can see right now people are starting to leave the BB&T Center. It was a very serious, a very sober conversation, but just in some brief conversations that I've had with students who have come out, they feel like a lot of what was said today was just politics as usual. They say they didn't hear as much as they had wanted to. We're going to learn more from them and bring you that later on in the newscast, but at least this is the beginning of a conversation. Calvin Lurie, I'll send it back to you.
Janine, with such a huge crowd there, live, thank you.
Politics as usual is how high school students describe this? Really? That's the way that I don't know that many high school students even care about politics or even know what politics as usual means. So let me get this straight. A kid who's in junior ROTC who shielded students while the firing was going on and had an idea about school safety that involved armed veterans not taking anybody's weapons ends up not at this event because CNN, according to him, wanted him to say things that he did not support. Well, CNN says it didn't happen. CNN says a lot of things. CNN says that Donald Trump colluded with Russia. CNN says Hillary Clinton did nothing wrong with classified information. The problem we have right now is there's no reason for this young man to lie, but there's always reasons for CNN to lie because that's what they do. They have an agenda. And they definitely have an agenda as far as the Second Amendment is concerned. They do. And for those who have forgotten, this type of event and this type of interaction with the public surrounding the event is the reason why Dana Loesch said this at CPAC 2018.
Now I'm going to say something that some people are going to say is controversial. So I'll say it really slowly so all the people on the platform in the back can hear me loud and clear. Many in legacy media love mass shootings. You guys love it. Now I'm not saying that you love the tragedy, but I am saying that you love the ratings. Crying white mothers are ratings gold to you and many in the legacy media in the back. And notice I said crying white mothers because there are thousands of grieving black mothers in Chicago every weekend, and you don't see town halls for them, do you? Where's the CNN town hall for Chicago? Where's the CNN town hall for sanctuary cities? Where was the CNN town hall for Jamil Shaw Sr., whose son was murdered by someone who illegally entered the country and had been deported repeatedly? Where was his voice? Where was the voice of those junior ROTC members last night, CNN? If it bleeds, it leads, doesn't it? And I don't mean to ignore you all here, but I'm really looking at a lot of the legacy media back there on the platform. And you can write whatever you want about me, and you can come find me in the hallways, and you can scream at me, and you can try to confront me. But I'm here. We're not going anywhere. I call BS.
I like how she threw in, what happened to the junior ROTC folks? Why come their voice wasn't heard in your town hall? They actually shielded students to make sure that they wouldn't get shot. And they didn't have any weapons. So what is this about, really? Well, how come we only have town halls for selected things where we can get the crying white mothers? Because they know that if they can get enough crying white people moved by emotion, that's still the majority of the electorate, and maybe they'll get what they want, which is gun control, also known as gun restriction and gun confiscation. They want everything to look like Illinois, by the way. Look up the gun laws in Illinois and you'll know what I'm talking about. So how many of you have already figured out the reason for these sustained and orchestrated now attacks on the Second Amendment? Your answer is globalism. Because globalists know that you can neither enslave nor fully control an armed populace. And any people that are unable to kill to guard their liberty, they're not much more than serfs. Let me tell you what happens. You cannot maintain a republic without guns. You can only maintain a democracy, which is the most oppressive form of government known to man, because all it takes is two people to your one person to make sure you can't do anything that represents you having liberty. That's the end game. The end game is democracy, because then the United States would fall. If you haven't figured that out yet, I don't know. Well, crazy people shouldn't have guns. you knew enough about this crazy guy to make sure that his gun had been taken away before he could hurt somebody. He told you he was going to shoot people, and you knew that he told people he was going to shoot someone. He did it as far back as September. He did it again in January. You knew it and did nothing, and now you have a town hall to say, let's take everybody's guns away? I'm with Dana Loesch. I call BS. You want to take guns away from people? There is no republic. You want to try to determine which people? Who's going to make the determination? Well, they might kill somebody. I hate to tell you this, but as Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must from time to time be refreshed with the blood of tyrants and patriots. It is its natural manure. I don't want to see anybody die, but I would rather see gravestones than plantations. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, talkamericaradio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, freedominamericaradio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. The Democrats are falling apart. Let's just put it out there. I know what's being said. Oh, they've won some elections and it's really putting pressure on Trump. Stop it. The Democrats have been getting their behinds handed to them steadily since Barack Obama was inaugurated first in 2009. In that time, they have lost more than 1,000 elected offices to the Republican Party. Let me recount this for you. They lost the White House. They lost the Senate. They had an 18-seat majority over the Republicans in 2009. And when you added the two independent senators who often caucused with them, they had a filibuster-proof 60-seat majority in 2009. Now they are in the minority by a handful of seats. They had a more than 70-seat majority in the House at the beginning of 2009. And now they have more than a 40-seat minority. They had 28 governorships. Now they have 19. They had 60 of the 99 state legislative chambers in this country. They were the majority in 60 of them. Now they are the majority in 32. And now what they want, not to mention they already have lost special elections. It's amazing how quickly we forget the special elections that were won by Republicans after the election in 2016. But now we have a few, and the media, of course, is playing this up. But the Democrats have no message. Does anybody remember the better deal that the Democrats ran out there with some fanfare back in July of 2017? Oh, you don't remember it? They're doing their best to not remember it either. But here's what Chuck Schumer had to say back in June of 2017, trying to find a message for the Democrat Party and acknowledging the obvious.
Democrats lost another special election this week in Georgia, Georgia 6. That's 4 in a row. Led to a lot of second-guessing by prominent Democrats, including Tim Ryan, Congressman Tim Ryan, who said, our brand, want to show it right there, our brand is worse than Trump.
Okay, here's the number one lesson from Georgia 6. Democrats need a strong, bold, sharp-edged, and common-sense economic agenda. Policy, platform, message that appeal to the middle class, that resonate with the middle class, and show that, and unite Democrats. That's what I've been working on for months. And I've been talking to Democrats, House and Senate, all across the country. I've been talking to Trump voters. I was at a Yankee game Saturday night, and I sat next to someone, just because that's how the seats were. We sit in the grandstand wearing, I'm proud to be a deplorable voter, a truck driver. This economic message platform is going to resonate. It's what we were missing, and it's not going to be baby steps. It's going to be bold. We're coming out with it this summer, within a month. You will see it, and Democrats will try to pass it legislatively for a year and campaign on it in 2018. It's what we were missing in 2016 and in the past. We know that. When you lose an election, you don't blame other people, you blame yourself.
Congressman Ryan and
we
others
need to do it.
Say it may be necessary but not sufficient. Also, they say Nancy Pelosi has to go.
Yeah, look, they always blame the leader. I think if we come up with this strong, bold economic package, it will change things around. That's what we were missing. People don't like Trump. He's at 40%. But they say, what the heck do the Democrats stand for? Ryan has a point here. We better stand for something, and it can't be baby steps. Democrats are going to be pleased. I'm talking to Bernie Sanders. I'm talking to Joe Manchin. This is going to be really something that Democrats can be proud of, and I'm excited about it.
Congressman Schumer, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And what happened? It was called the better deal. Have you heard anything about it? Have you heard anything to replace it? The only thing the Democrats stand for is that they're not Donald Trump and they believe Donald Trump is bad. Now, that's despite the fact that Donald Trump has gotten rid of Obamacare, effectively. There is no individual mandate anymore. The death panels, as they were called, which were there to ostensibly control Medicare costs, that's gone because they were going to ration care, whether you believe it or not. So, and of course, the executive order that Donald Trump issued early in his administration gutted the oppressive regulations of Obamacare even before the mandate had been repealed. So, what the Republican Party said they were going to do since 2010 and didn't do for 7 years, Donald Trump got done in 1, with, of course, the help of Congress. Tax cuts have come in, and people have seen money. The economy has improved. It was improving even before tax reform occurred. But it's come in, and people are receiving bonuses in their checks. There have been more than 2 million jobs created under Trump. Unemployment is at its lowest level in a long time, and black unemployment hit its lowest level in recorded history, the lowest black unemployment on record. Was it still higher than black unemployment? Sure. But it was the lowest on record. What is the message? Because Chuck Schumer is saying we were missing that message. We didn't have a good economic message. We didn't have a good appeal. Donald Trump ran on the very message you were missing. He won, and now he's delivering on that. What do you got? What do you have? You went further and further left with your choice of party chairs with Tom Perez, and you put with him a progressive Muslim, Keith Ellison. And has anyone seen or heard from those two guys recently? Where is their leadership of the party? Where the heck are these guys? The only ones you see are Nancy Pelosi, who sounds increasingly senile, and in some cases, for a lot of people, was last seen chewing on her dentures during the State of the Union address. You just heard Chuck Schumer. He sounds like a clown. The Democrats have no message on DACA. DACA and immigration was supposed to be their thing. Back in September, Donald Trump gave them 6 months to work out a deal. He just said, Congress, tell you what, I'm not going to do anything on DACA until March. Between now and then, bring me something so I can sign. It is now late February. March will be here in less than a week. And there is nothing, because the Democrats do not want responsible immigration. They want to throw the gates open and let in the worst of people that they can find, which has nothing to do with being Mexican. They want to let in Islamic terrorists. They don't care. They want to open up the floodgates to Syrian refugees. They don't care. They want to open up the floodgates to what were called fecal void countries, as though that's somehow going to help America. It won't. So the problem we have is that you have a party with no real leaders, no message, but they're still soldiering on. Their appeal is emotional only. Now, the one thing that's going to be hard for them with an emotional message only, and that includes gun control. That's their big thing. That's their big push now, because there's been another shooting, so there's going to be more gun control messaging. And they have CNN doing their dirty work, setting up orchestrated events for that. That's not a logical message. It's not an objective message. It is an emotional and subjective message. It's a semantics message, which at the end of the day, there's not a law that you could have passed that was going to make the FBI do their job. They had the information, they failed. The same for the sheriff's office in Broward County. Everyone knew that that kid was a problem. They didn't do anything about it. Gun control wouldn't have done anything either. Well, he shouldn't have had a gun. You knew he had a gun and you knew he was a problem. Why didn't you do it? If you can't take the gun from somebody when you have the ability to, and you know he's a problem, please tell me what law is going to make it possible for you to do what you already had the capability of doing and failed. Gun control, mass shootings is not a gun problem. It's a morality problem. I grew up with kids who used to have guns in the back of their trucks at school. Nobody ever walked into the classroom with a gun. The gun stayed in the gun rack. But I didn't grow up around and go to school with people who have literally no morality. They're amoral. And that's the problem. Back to the Democrats. Kennedy on Fox Business News. That young lady had a little interesting piece talking about how the Democrats are actually thinking about running against the tax cuts, which is just, well, you listen to it.
Republicans and Democrats both think they have the winning issue for the midterms, taxes. The president is enjoying a 10-point tax-happy poll bump, according to Monmouth, and economic optimism has taken a 20-point turn northward, with people seeing more money in their paychecks starting today. And bootylicious 401ks, how are Democrats going to sell a hot plate of stinky doom when people are finally getting sweet relief? Believe it or not, that is their plan. With low unemployment and that palpable money joy, it's not the environment for Democrats to throw the brakes on economic momentum. When the economy tanks after a Republican administration, that's when Dems can logically pounce and offer the salve of socialism to heal cruel cyclical wounds. When we are on an upswing, the last thing you want to hear from Nancy Pelosi in terms of taxes is this.
Well, it may have to be a replace and repeal. Replace them and repeal the bill.
And replace it with what? Multi-trillion-dollar deficits and free college? Hike the corporate tax rate back up and watch the Dow swirl down the turlet? If the Democrats don't have a plan, and throwing water on a birthday cake ain't exactly genius legislating, they will lose if the indicators remain positive. It's the economy, stupid. You don't promise to repeal something if you don't have a plan, and you don't have a plan. That's what bit Republicans in the arse. And taxes may be the only thing they get right, and the only thing they need to stay in House power beyond 2018. If Democrats could offer a positive, practical message, they'd have plenty of takers. Until then, people are going to take the money and run.
The Democrats have nothing to offer. And where they want to take their stand is actually by taking back from people something that they deserve, which is their own money, and the benefits to the economy of lower taxes, which is more revenues for the government, more jobs. It's like, really? Let's understand something. When you take away the emotion, when you take away the so-called grieving fathers and the savvy high school students, and you take away the people crying because after staying here illegally for decades, they finally get caught and deported, and you're crying over the breakup of families that never should have been formed in this country in the first place. When you get past all that and you look at what the Democrats have to offer, they don't have anything. What are they going to do to improve the country? They couldn't figure out immigration. They're going to have to get dragged kicking and screaming to the table to come up with something on infrastructure, which is something that the president has said he wants to do. And so far, the things that the president has said he wants to do, they get addressed. What is it that they stand for? Have you heard from Tom Perez? No. Have you heard from Keith Ellison? No. Have you heard anything actionable from Nancy Pelosi? No. Have you heard anything worthwhile from Chuck Schumer? No. They have no economic message. They have no immigration message. They have no infrastructure message. All they have is, don't you dislike Trump, and don't you think Russia interfered with the election? Well, not everybody dislikes Trump. And the other nagging fact of the matter is, you still have not one iota of evidence that indicates anyone colluded with Russia to throw the election. I'm going to turn this over to my good friend, Ron Edwards. And after that, we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Gun control advocates like Geraldo Rivera said that removing firearms will stop events like the recent shootings in Florida from happening. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, is Geraldo Rivera out of his Banana Republic mind? If gun control prevented horrific events like the shootings in Florida, remember Virginia Tech, or every day in the ghettos of Cleveland and Chicago, then those would be the safest places on earth because of heavy gun restrictions. No, my fellow American, the underlying problem is a lack of proper moral instruction and shaming of evildoers who seek to bring harm to sovereign individuals. Another problem is the media's general omission of the Florida murderers' affiliation and attachment to leftist hate-filled organizations like CARE and Antifa. When children are not given a foundation of a more righteous standard, then very often they will adopt the mindset of the left, which entails a lack of self-control, hatred of that which is good, and a desire to lash out at others and bring about destruction. If taking the weapons away from law-abiding citizens ended indiscriminate violence, then there would not be a massive stabbing epidemic in gun-free London, England. I'm Ron Edwards.
Blowing away the myths and revealing the truth. You can continue to blow away the myths with Ron Edwards on Facebook, Twitter, and theronedwards.com. Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Men Thinking.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Men Thinking.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Men Thinking.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Men Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem.
Black Men Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking on the dominant force of Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.net. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Glad to be back. And let's talk about the CPAC shenanigans for a moment. There were some interesting moments at CPAC. There normally are. But something that happened at the CPAC this year, a series of things that happened surrounding CPAC this year, caught my attention. No, it's not the very high support for Donald Trump. That is pretty much expected simply because he did what he said he was going to do. Everything that he has attempted is something that he has said he was going to do, and whatever success he is getting, of course, was going to be welcomed by those who supported his agenda to begin with. So that's not surprising. What is surprising are certain other events that occurred. I'm going to start with the so-called conservative columnist Mona Karen, who came out and had some choice words about women and the GOP during her time at CPAC.
I'm disappointed in people on our side for being hypocrites about sexual harassers and abusers of women who are in our party, who are sitting in the White House, who brag about their extramarital affairs, who brag about mistreating women. And because he happens to have an R after his name, we look the other way, we don't complain. This is a party that was ready to endorse, the Republican Party endorsed Roy Moore for the Senate in the state of Alabama, even though he was a credibly accused child molester. You cannot claim that you stand for women and put up with that.
Well, you know, this is a really interesting point because there's been this, and there are many, but there's been this explosion of sexual harassment scandals, and in many cases, accusation has been equal to conviction, right? Many people get accused, and that's all anyone needs. I worry, honestly, I worry about the young men as well as the young women because they have no idea what to do. So, that's right. You can.
Actually,
guys, right?
Speaking of bad guys, there was quite an interesting person. There was quite an interesting person who was on this stage the other day. Her name is Marine Le Pen. Now, why was she here? Why was she here? She's a young, no longer in office politician from France. I think the only reason she was here is because she's named Le Pen. And the Le Pen name is a disgrace. Her grandfather is a racist and a Nazi. She claims that she stands for him. And the fact that CPAC invited her is a disgrace. Well,
let's see if we can dissect this a little bit. This is not a conservative woman. This is a feminist. Because those are all feminist talking points. Well, you're not treating women well. Well, you heard the other members of the panel, I guess the moderator of the panel, saying, you know what, we are getting this bit about every allegation needs to be taken as conviction. So all you have to do, and this goes all the way back to Clarence Thomas with Anita Hill, all that's supposed to happen is that a woman is supposed to make an allegation, and therefore the man who is accused is supposed to cave and give up whatever public ambitions that he has because he's been accused. Clarence Thomas, of course, did not fold, and he is still on the Supreme Court to this day. But Herman Cain folded. Gary Hart folded. There are some other people who folded. And the whole idea is that they're supposed to fold. And then, of course, the things about Donald Trump, which are just that, things. I don't know of many women who have had interaction with Donald Trump who have anything bad to say about him. That includes his ex-wives. Not my business. But this is silliness. You may have noticed also that her comments were met with some resistance from the audience. That is noteworthy to me. That's very noteworthy to me. It's a point, but it's not the point. It builds with other things. Other thing about her criticism of Le Pen, and I'm like, well, what are you criticizing her for? Oh, so you're criticizing her because of her grandfather and that she will not denounce her grandfather to support you or to satisfy you? That's not the reason people do things, Miss Karen. They don't do things to satisfy you. And the real issue is, remember something, two pillars of globalism are feminism and opposition to nationalism. Globalism depends on those things. That is why they had a problem with Trump. That is one of the reasons why they had a problem with Trump. That is the reason they opposed Brexit. That is the reason that they opposed the Le Pen family in France, because they are French nationalists, and that runs against globalism. You put that together with feminism, with antipathy toward Christianity and gun control, and you are on your way to a globalist paradise ideologically. Mona Karen is not conservative. Don't let anybody lie to you. She is a feminist. Women are not the most important creatures on the planet. They're not the least either. But as the other female moderator on the panel said, what about the guys here? Because they can't do anything because of how they're going to be perceived, which is the whole point of this nonsense in the first place. We're trying to get men to back down in favor of women because we know a society run by women can be more easily overcome. Full stop. Let's move on to something else that was related to CPAC. Ian Walters and Michael Steele. That was hilarious to me. At a Reagan dinner, Ian Walters, who I believe is the communications director for CPAC, made a statement that was considered somewhat controversial.
My wife, Karen, and I met at CPAC in 2009. We're a CPAC couple. It was the year Rush Limbaugh spoke, made a little bit of history. We were somewhat lost as a group. We had just elected the first African American president, and that was a big deal. And that was a hill that we got over, and it was something that we were all proud of. And we weren't sure what to do. And a little bit of cynicism, what did we do? This is a terrible thing. We elected Mike Steele to be the RNC chair because he's a black guy, and that was the wrong thing to do.
Now, I know that is going to just cause all kinds of ripples, and Michael Steele was totally upset and embarrassed and whatever else he was. He actually went on to MSNBC to talk about his outrage. Now, remember, MSNBC is about as far from conservatism as you can get. Why are you showing up there, Mr. Steele? But he did show up there.
John Levine reported CPAC Communications Director Ian Walters at Reagan dinner. Quote, we elected Mike Steele as chairman because he was a black guy. That was the wrong thing to do. He followed up, comment was met with gasps at our table. And joining me now on the phone from CPAC is Michael Steele. Michael, thank you very much for calling in. I appreciate it on short notice. So how did you hear about this comment, and what was your reaction?
I was finishing up my radio program on Sirius XM, and it came across my phone. Someone came running up to the table and said, have you seen this? Right in the middle of the conversation I was having with one of our guests, and I looked down at my phone. And, of course, I had one of those moments where you just go, what the? So, yeah, a little bit shocked, very disappointed, surprised that people still in the party feel this way and look at the contributions that anyone would make to the party through the prism of race. And so it's unfortunate, it's stupid, it's immature, and I'm waiting to speak with Matt Schlapp about it. I hope it is not a reflection of the leadership of CPAC. I participated in CPAC for many, many years. I've spoken in CPAC. And I think also, Joyce, it's almost endemic of what's going on in this country as well.
Well, that is my question to you,
and how
Michael.
quickly people revert to race as a weapon, and it's ignorant.
Well, that's the question I was going to ask you, because you've been a Republican a long time. Do you sense that the party has changed and shifted toward more openness with these kind of views, in your view?
Clearly. Yeah. And I think that's something that's going to be concerning going forward. Play itself out during the campaign, and we continue to see that. So this episode is sad, but look, we're going to as crazy as much as we can, and again, education starts from within.
Indeed. Have you spoken with Mr. Walters?
He did call, and he's tried to explain himself and said what he was thinking. He related it back to Barack Obama's election, and then he said at one point, I apologize, and I just said, that's not acceptable. It's not enough. So.
I'm not sure the Obama excuse is helpful, but I appreciate
the Obama excuse is not helpful, and I'll talk about it some more tomorrow on my series program, so folks can tune in and listen to that as well.
Actually, the Obama excuse is not an excuse, it's a reason. If you remember what happened after 2008, people were actually saying that the GOP was going to be extinct. It was a dead party. And the GOP had lost because of John McCain, that interesting individual, and we had a black president, and you had a 18-seat majority in the Senate, and you had a 70-something seat majority in the House for the Democrat Party, and you had 28 governors, Democrat, in the country. And you had, at the end of that election, you had 60 of the 99 state legislatures in the hands of Democrats after that election. Yes, they were talking about a death knell. So what did they do? We know what we need to do because they're showing us that they love everybody black. It was a reactionist move by the GOP, and it was the wrong move because in 2010, when the nation swung back in horror against Barack Obama, had they had a legitimate chair as the RNC chairman, they probably would have won back the Senate and not just the House in 2010. He was horrific. Not to mention, in April of 2010, some people don't recall this, CNN, Republican chief faces fallout over sex-themed nightclub tab. Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Steele criticized after the committee bankrolled a Republican donors tab at a risque Hollywood nightclub with other party members. Now, if you're trying to be the Republican Party and try to bring things in on a message of morality, family values, traditional values, this is not what you do, but that's what he did. He claimed that, well, I've won more elections than any RNC chairman since 1938. Well, first of all, the chair doesn't win elections. And you're the same chair who actually had Ms. Donnelly, whatever her name was, in Delaware, Miss I Am Not a Witch. That became her campaign slogan. And you had Sharon Angle, who was sitting up here just dogging out immigrant kids during her campaign. If you're a real campaign chair, had you been able to swing those two in 2010, we may have had a big deal. And that is some other candidates. You had candidates in other places who were talking about rape in a ridiculous manner. And why did you not vet them and not, come on now. He was an affirmative action hire, period. And the GOP was going to win in 2010 if Donald Duck was the chairman. That's how bad the Democrats were. That's how much they were rejected. So for Ian Walters to call that out as the wrong thing to do and as a reaction to Obama's winning was absolutely correct. But you don't want to hear that. Last thing I want to talk about with regard to CPAC deals with gun control. And it deals with Dana Loesch, who spoke to the crowd, but directed these comments at the media.
Now I'm going to say something that some people are going to say is controversial. So I'll say it really slowly so all the people on the platform in the back can hear me loud and clear. Many in legacy media love mass shootings. You guys love it. Now, I'm not saying that you love the tragedy, but I am saying that you love the ratings. Crying white mothers are ratings gold to you and many in the legacy media in the back. And notice I said crying white mothers because there are thousands of grieving black mothers in Chicago every weekend, and you don't see town halls for them, do you? Where's the CNN town hall for Chicago? Where's the CNN town hall for sanctuary cities? Where was the CNN town hall for Jamil Shaw Sr., whose son was murdered by someone who illegally entered the country and had been deported repeatedly? Where was his voice? Where was the voice of those junior ROTC members last night, CNN? If it bleeds, it leads, doesn't it? And I don't mean to ignore you all here, but I'm really looking at a lot of the legacy media back there on the platform. And you can write whatever you want about me, and you can come find me in the hallways, and you can scream at me, and you can try to confront me. But I'm here. We're not going anywhere. I call BS.
She calls BS. She's right to do so. This is what I get out of CPAC this year, more than perhaps in prior years. There is a different feeling among the members of the conservative movement. They are no longer apologizing as they were in 2008. They are no longer trying to say we're not really bad people. You just ought to give us a chance. They're not doing that anymore. They are on the offensive. And they are on the offensive for a very simple reason. It goes all the way back to 2008, and it goes back to Barack Obama. Barack Obama was the best thing that could have happened for the conservative movement or the anti-progressive movement, simply because from the time he was elected until the time he left, more than 1,000 elected offices changed hands from Democrat to Republican. I told you about how things were in 2009. After this last election, you had a 40-plus seat majority in the House. When back in 2009, it was 70-plus seats for the Democrats. The Senate switched hands. You had an 18-seat majority in the Senate for Democrats, and now you have a less than 10, but a majority for Republicans. There's no Democrat in the White House, at least not by party affiliation. And 67 out of 99 state legislative chambers are now in GOP hands, when in 2009, 60 of them were with the Democrats. This is what you need to understand. CPAC no longer has to apologize. Conservative movement people no longer have to apologize. They can go on the attack. Dana Loesch went on the attack. The people at CPAC went on the attack against Mona Karen. Ian Walters went on the attack against political correctness in the hire of Michael Steele as the RNC chairman. He didn't get there until like a sixth ballot. This is a good news story for America. Because if those who actually have the most American of views, then that would be CPAC as opposed to anything on the progressive side. For them to be forceful in their views and willing to confront those that oppose them, that's a good thing for America. I look forward to them doing more of that heading into 2018 because they have plenty of ammunition. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, Talk America Radio US.US. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, Freedom in America Radio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. You may recall, not that long ago, there was a discussion about immigration from other countries into the U.S., and the term fecal void, or more graphic language than that, was uttered to the media by Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois. He attributed that language to the president, although no one else said he did say that, and no one else ever heard those words spoken from the mouth of anyone other than Senator Durbin. But the discussion was on about the type of countries that people wanting to enter the U.S. came from and how they were terrible countries. Well, what I don't understand is how Dick Durbin, being the political animal that he is and being the Trump hater that he is, how he would have missed the opportunity to tell the president that he needs to not be worried about immigration, but be worried about the terrible conditions in some of America's great cities like San Francisco.
Well, the Democratic stronghold of San Francisco has become, well, especially in downtown, a festering pile of garbage, feces, and drug needles, according to a survey by a local news station. Bay Area's NBC's investigation of 153 city blocks, including popular tourist spots, found trash on every block, 300 piles of feces on 96 blocks, lovely, 100 discarded hypodermic needles on 41 blocks, that's all. So this is a sanctuary city, is it? Well, here's a local deli owner. He's fed up.
It's filthy. It's disgusting. Yesterday, we taped somebody just on the side of my building peeing on my restaurant in broad daylight. I actually have pictures of people shooting up in the street. It's absolute mayhem at this point. It's completely out of control.
I had a caller on my radio show today, said she was in San Francisco recently with her kids, and she also saw someone shooting up right on the side of the street, tying up the arm and putting the needle in. Had to shield her daughter's eyes. Not exactly a paradise for businesses or workers. Joining us now in San Francisco Republican Party Vice Chair Ken Liu is also a commissioner with the BART Police Citizen Review Board, and Ethan Bierman, a political commentator and Bay Area radio host. Now, Ethan, I love San Francisco. Let me just say, I love it. I have family there. I have friends there. Been going for a long time. It has a major problem. And I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or somewhere in between. It's not getting better. It seems to be getting worse. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's true. It is problematic. I will say that under Mayor Ed Lee, who recently passed away, we've reduced the number of veterans who are homeless in the city of San Francisco. We are taking an approach, but remember, we are being handcuffed by a number of laws that prohibit the ability of taking care of people with mental health issues and making them get the psychiatric care that they need, getting them the addictive care. We allow people under the guise of civil liberties to be free and not put them in places to get the help that they need to protect and help themselves, let alone others, and allow them to become contributing members of society again. This is a really big issue. Nobody wants to step in feces. I have children. I don't want to do that either. I don't like finding used needles. But there are approaches, and the city is trying, but we actually need some federal help in this case, in my opinion, because a lot of the homeless are not from San Francisco. They come because they're not going to freeze to death when we're having a cold snap, unlike the rest of the country.
Are you blaming Trump for this? Are you blaming Donald Trump for the fact that San Francisco
Absolutely
has
not. This is a successive...
Okay. Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
This is a successive series of issues and court rulings, for that matter. Laura, you know about that. We've had 4 federal courts rule that we can't do certain things.
Yeah, don't get me started on the judge. Don't get me started on the judges. I'm going to do a whole big segment on the judges tomorrow. But Ed, let's go to you on this. This is so sad on so many levels, but this is supposed to be the progressive paradise of San Francisco. It's a super Democrat majority. The Board of Supervisors for years, going back to Gavin Newsom, when he tried to get rid of the cash for remember the cash for the homeless? He wanted to do the vouchers. They fought him back then. He was my first guest, by the way, on my radio show that I ever had 17 years ago was Gavin Newsom. But to me, it's gotten worse and worse, even with some modest improvements around the edges.
Yeah, so San Francisco hasn't had a Republican elected office for multiple decades now. And so none of the problems that we could see in terms of the homeless here can be attributed to the Republicans at all in San Francisco, simply because we don't have a single Republican elected to office representing San Francisco. The homeless epidemic that we have right here is just getting worse. In fact, every year, I was born here in San Francisco, and I can see progressively every year the problem has been getting worse and worse every year with no solutions. I've met with multiple Board of Supervisor members here in San Francisco, and they just keep asking for more money. And when they ask for more money, it's basically rewarding a program that doesn't have any benchmarks. There is no solution, and their solution is to just throw more money at the problem.
Well, Ken, what they're also doing is declaring themselves, year after year, we're a sanctuary city, we're a sanctuary state. We see the problem in Orange County, we see the problem in L.A., we have tent cities in both places, and we're bringing more people into the situation, and more people who are indigent and themselves are without jobs and a way to support themselves. So I don't see how the sanctuary status of San Francisco or the state is doing anybody any favors. Ethan and Ken, great segment. Thank you so much. There's a lot to get through on this, and we're going to have to come up with some creative solutions.
Wow. So that was an interesting part. She referred to a report from a news organization, that would be NBC in the Bay Area. How dirty is San Francisco? That was the first sentence of that story. And it said an NBC Bay Area investigation reveals a dangerous mix of drugs, needles, garbage, and human feces throughout downtown San Francisco. They looked at 153 blocks, and the more than 20-mile stretch includes popular tourist spots like Union Square, major hotel chains. It's also home to City Hall, schools, playgrounds, and a police station. As the investigative unit photographed nearly a dozen hypodermic needles scattered across one block, a group of preschool students happened to walk by on their way to an afternoon field trip. We see peep, we see poop-poop, we see peep, we see needles, we see trash, said teacher Adelita Orellana. Sometimes they ask what it is, and that's a conversation that's a little difficult to have with a 2-year-old, but we just tell them that those things are full of germs, that they are dangerous, and they should never be touched. Really? The guy who was trying to defend this nonsense in the audio clip said, well, we have so many homeless here because they're here trying to stay out of the cold. Have you been to San Francisco in the wintertime? San Francisco is not a warm place. It's not. They're going to San Francisco because there are no legal remedies that the city has to do anything about them. They can go there and do as they please, including, since it is a sanctuary city within a sanctuary state, illegal immigrants. They can go there and just hang. You can create your own environment. You don't have to be somebody who's putting feces on the street. Yeah. That's that place. Now, if you want to talk about some place where you're likely to be warm during the wintertime, let's stay in California, the richest state, the most populous state, the state with all those electoral votes that the Democrats count on so much. And let's look at the city of Anaheim. This is from September of 2017.
Frustrations are bubbling over tonight in Anaheim. That's where the city council members met to set a vote on whether to declare a state of emergency over the issue of homelessness. Kick Line's Tom Wade is live outside Anaheim City Hall right now where things got a little heated, right, Tom?
Yeah, things definitely got a little bit ugly inside the Anaheim City Hall complex, Jeff. They are set to vote probably in the next hour and a half. I just got a text message from one of the officials inside, and this is all about whether to declare a state of emergency over the issue of homelessness.
You have no compassion, and you know what? I feel sorry for you because you don't care about people.
Heated words tonight inside Anaheim City Council chamber, pitting neighbors against neighbors along with activists over the issue of homelessness. At the center of the controversy, this tent city in the shadow of Angels Stadium, where about 422 homeless people live. Anaheim City Councilwoman Chris Murray is proposing a state of emergency, which drew sharp responses.
You come up with bathrooms and showers? Take them to your house. I'll rent a bus. We'll deliver them.
Why would the public feel comfortable with sending more officers down there
to be around the most vulnerable members of our society.
The only solution to homelessness is housing. We encourage the council to commit funding to housing solutions.
Where are our rights? I don't want to see people with feces in my yard, needles in my yard.
The measure is largely symbolic. No specific amount of money would be devoted to dealing with the homeless issue, but city officials say if approved, it would allow Anaheim to open up more shelter beds and resources to help those in tent cities get back on their feet. Earlier in the day, the Orange County Board of Supervisors voted to approve stepped-up policing here along the Santa Ana River Trail.
Mr. Supervisor, I'm going to hold you personally responsible for my residents, my District 5 residents, because they want to see something happen. They want it now. They cannot wait any longer.
And that Board of Supervisors vote to approve more stepped-up policing will likely lead to more removal of homeless people in that tent city. The question is, where will they go? That vote tonight may help with answers on that. That may help place homeless folks in some of the shelters here in Anaheim, but officials here are also urging other cities in Orange County to help with resources. Reporting live in Anaheim, I'm Tom Waite. Back to you in the studio.
Tom, thank you.
That's Anaheim, which is the city in Orange County, California, which is generally a Republican area of the state, one of the few, at least along the coast. You can find the same thing in Los Angeles. So you can go throughout California, from the Bay Area on down, and find a place that claims to be a utopia of progressivism and is simply a human cesspool. Let's not leave it there. California is not the only one. New York, back in 2016, the month of the election, as a matter of fact, reported record homelessness, 60,252 people living homeless in New York City, a record. What is it with all these progressive places and sanctuary places having all these issues with homelessness? The answer very simply is Cloward Piven. What they want is they want to attract all these people, and what they want is to force others who are not in that situation to give up resources, to give up their money, to overload the system to the point where no one can do anything and everything is in the power of the government to resolve. Because they will basically bring these people in to burden the system, and they will tell you, you either need to give us the resources, let us tax you, let us use your property at less than market rates. We're going to make you build things the way we want you to build them, as far as low-income housing, which the government pays for. So now you have to pay for your house and other houses as well, because the government is going to bring people in who cannot pay and make you pay for them. All this to bring the whole of governance down around your head and to make you slaves. Do you now understand why Dick Durbin wants as many people as possible from fecal void countries to come into the United States? He wants people who are used to these living conditions so they can come in and overload the public assistance systems that we have, just like Muslims have done that in Western Europe. They are overloading it. It is not sustainable. And the idea is to bring the society to collapse. If you don't understand it, then you don't. But the idea that it's not happening is no longer realistic. San Francisco's in trouble. Orange County is in trouble. Los Angeles is in trouble. New York is setting records. And I can almost guarantee you, anywhere where you find progressives in charge, you will see this problem, because progressives and the Democrats who are their elected representatives know exactly where this leads. And they don't mind taking you down if it allows them to have power over you. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WWJHC, Talk 22.1 WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show. I'm going to talk about the weakness of needy ballers. And what I'm referring to is the quote-unquote feud, if you want to call it that, the ongoing media spat that's going on between LeBron James and Laura Ingraham, who is a commentator with her own show on the Fox News Network. And before that, and in addition to that, she's been on talk radio for quite a number of years. She's also an author. She's also worked in politics. She is a political animal and has the bona fides to support that. Well, you may know that during a podcast where LeBron James and Kevin Durant were riding along with that pillar of political thought, Kerry Champion, they got into some type of discussion regarding somehow the President of the United States.
Do is to begin a rally of hate, and we have to go through it.
You mentioned Muhammad Ali, which I thought was interesting, and you guys are talking about hate and criticism. We are at a watershed moment in this country.
Yeah, for sure.
And we cannot deny that we are very divided, especially in the political arena.
Yeah, for sure.
Warriors said, if we had an invite, we're not going to the White House. LeBron, you called the president a bum.
Yeah, straight up.
How do you describe the climate for an athlete with a platform nowadays that want to talk about what's happening in our world?
Well, the climate is hot. The number one job in America, the point of person, is someone who doesn't understand the people and really don't give a about the people. When I was growing up, there were like 3 jobs that you look for inspiration, or you felt like these were the people that can give me life. It was the President of the United States, it was whoever was the best in sports, and then it was like the greatest musician at the time. You never thought you can be them, but you can grab inspiration from. I feel like I can be, you know, it was a neighborhood African-American cop, and he was cool as hell coming around. You know, I feel like I could be him. Yeah, I could be him, but I never felt I could be the President of the United States, but I grabbed inspiration from that. And this time right now, with the President of the United States, it's at a bad time. And while we cannot change what comes out of that man's mouth, we can continue to alert the people that watch us, that listen to us, as this is not the way.
When we're talking about leadership and what's going on in our country, it's all about leadership. And I learned that playing basketball. You know, I learned a lot of life skills from playing basketball. You need to empower people. You need to, you know, encourage people, and that's what builds a great team. And I feel like our team as a country is not ran by a great coach.
It's not even a surprise when he says something. It's not even a surprise. It's like laughable. It's like
it's laughable
and it's scary.
But it's also scary because I shouldn't be numb to your racist comments.
Right.
I shouldn't be numb to your behavior.
That to me was the funniest thing imaginable. If you take out Kerry Champion, this would have been the NBA version of Diamond and Silk, with Silk, I imagine, or the quiet one being Kevin Durant. And spoke up at the end a little bit. That's kind of how that works. And let's start with Durant, talking about he learned life. He hadn't lived life. He's played a game all of his days. He hasn't been out there living life. He's had money and attention and fame thrown at him, showered upon him. He has never had to work. The worst thing he's had to worry about was where he was going to get paid millions to play basketball. Don't talk to me about life skills. You have no life skills. Well, you got to empower people. Who have you empowered? You left the team that you were playing with. You cut and run from them. What life skill did you learn that taught you to cut and run from your teammates? Now, I'm not somebody who's mad at him for going to the Warriors and playing ball, but don't turn around and tell me about life skills. Don't come around and tell me about leadership. And LeBron James is going to talk to me about leadership? Man, you haven't even graduated college. You didn't even go to college. What do you know about leadership? Well, I'm paying for these kids to go to school. Are they completing it? Because African Americans or blacks, I hate that term, African Americans, blacks in this country have the poorest education completion percentage of anyone in the country. And you sending more of them to school doesn't change the completion percentage. That doesn't prepare them, because you say money doesn't get you a degree. It gets you in the door, but sooner or later you're going to have to perform. Anyway, so we're listening to all this nonsense from folks who have no clue. Well, you know, in the country today it's hot. It's hot what? You sit up at the NBA All-Star game. What? That don't represent the country. You guys have no clue. Anyway, Laura Ingraham got hold of this, and she took these two young men to task.
All right, we're going to create a new banner. This is a Jump Doc alert. NBA superstar LeBron James is talking politics again, and this time it's R-rated. Here's his barely intelligible, not to mention ungrammatical take on President Trump in a new ESPN podcast.
The number one job in America, the point of person, is someone who doesn't understand the people and really don't give a about the people.
But wait, there's more gripping insight. ESPN host Carrie Champion asked James and fellow NBA star Kevin Durant about what she described as Trump's racist comments.
I feel like our team as a country is not ran by a great coach.
It's not even a surprise when he says something. It's not even a surprise. It's like laughable. It's like
it's laughable.
It's laughable and it's scary.
But it's also scary.
Right,
because
right.
I shouldn't be numb to your racist comments.
Right.
I shouldn't be numb to your behavior.
I'm numb to this commentary. Like, must they run their mouths like that? Unfortunately, a lot of kids and some adults take these ignorant comments seriously. Look, there might be a cautionary lesson in LeBron for kids. This is what happens when you attempt to leave high school a year early to join the NBA. And it's always unwise to seek political advice from someone who gets paid $100 million a year to bounce a ball. Oh, and LeBron and Kevin, you're great players, but no one voted for you. Millions elected Trump to be their coach. So keep the political commentary to yourself, or as someone once said, shut up and dribble. We'll be right back. I'm still trying to get over the fact that Kevin Durant said, I feel like our country is not ran by a great coach. Does that mean I should go for a ran tomorrow morning before my radio show? Oh, my goodness.
Now, Laura Ingraham has taken a lot of heat from people of color, particularly in the sports world, which is about as progressive as you can get nowadays. It's like the Democrat Party is now in charge of all major sports, with the possible exception of hockey and NASCAR, but NASCAR may not be a major sport. It's ridiculous. She called him out on unintelligible, poor grammar, poor language skills, which is the exact same thing that progressives call the president out on. Look at how he speaks. It's terrible. Well, he still speaks better than this. Well, we don't think our coach gives a F about the people. That's not what the people think. That's the interesting thing. When you play a game for a living, you don't get that much say as to who is the coach. Of course, the rumors are is that LeBron chooses coaches. He denies it, but he's passive-aggressive anyway. He's the queen of passive aggression. So I don't know about that. But when you're the president of the United States, someone chose you. No one chose LeBron to lead anything. No one chose Durant to lead anything. If they want to have their words respected, then get out of the safe arena where you believe no one is supposed to criticize you for your foolishness and step out in the marketplace of ideas where the fact that you can speak the Queen's English with some level of proficiency matters. Oh, by the way, LeBron did get a chance to respond to this, of course, because the media is going to keep this going as long as they can because it's good ratings. And he did respond to Laura Ingraham, I believe, during the All-Star weekend. And this is some of what he had to say. And I'm going to give you a warning. This is not LeBron's finest speaking moment.
I actually laughed first when I first saw the reports, and then I watched the video and I saw exactly how it was put off. Well, first of all, I had no idea who she is or what she do until she won in that case because now I know who she is. It's for her to go up there and say what she said. First of all, I mean, I would have had a little bit more respect for her if she would have actually wrote those words. She probably said it right off the teleprompter. But that's okay. We live in we're back to everything I've been talking about over the last few years. So it lets me know that, everything I've been saying is correct for her to have that type of reaction. But we will definitely not shut up and dribble. I would definitely not do that. I mean too much to society. I mean too much to the youth. I mean too much to so many kids that feel like they don't have a way out and they need someone to help lead them out of the situation they're in. I also wish she would have did a little bit more fact checking because I actually did finish high school and didn't leave early. I graduated high school. To be an African American kid.
Did any of that make any sense to anyone? Oh, you did graduate high school, and that is the level of your spoken English skills. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what she do. Really? You're the inspiration, as far as you're concerned, for kids all across the country. And that's the way you speak. Is that how you want them to speak? To be an African American kid? Really? What would you know about that? You're an African American millionaire. Well, I grew up rough. Your roughness is behind you. I mean, it's still with you because you don't know how to communicate. Not to an audience. You know how to communicate to other ball players, and their language skills are not necessarily that much better than y'all because the NBA's gotten dumber because they don't require people to be educated, and they pay them so much that education is not even what they seek. Ben Simmons got into the NBA. Please don't ask that boy to speak. Have you noticed that you don't see a lot of film of interviews with Ben Simmons, who's in the NBA now? If you hear him speak, you'll probably understand why. Here is my point. This whole thing about weak and needy ballers who need to be coveted, who need to be prized and can't be criticized. Really? You're not even men. That's the behavior of prepubescent girls. Don't say nothing bad about me. And then when you get called, you start stuttering and tripping over yourself and trying to find a way to be smart, and you have nothing to say. This is craziness. But this is exactly what progressives want you to have in society. They want you to be concerned about the words of people who accomplish nothing. LeBron James and Kevin Durant are good basketball players. They are excellent basketball players who accomplish nothing. There is no value to GDP growth because Kevin Durant or LeBron James is on the team that won the NBA title. Doesn't matter. Somebody else could win, and the unemployment rate in America, or for blacks in America, is not affected by 1/10 of a percentage point by the words spoken by LeBron James or Kevin Durant. It doesn't matter. And to say that you're too important to society, in what way? Man, you didn't matter. You didn't matter to society before they knew who you were. And if you got into a plane wreck tomorrow, there'd be a period of grief and mourning. And guess what? We pick up and move on just like we did after everything else. For you to have the audacity and the arrogance to have your uneducated, poorly spoken behind think that you should not be criticized because you mean so much to society, you stiff-necked and uncircumcised of heart and ears. Shut up. I'm not going to tell you to shut up and dribble. I'm just going to tell you to shut up. Whether you dribble or not means nothing to me. But you haven't paid the dues required to allow you to speak and castigate 60-some-odd million Americans because you wanted a criminal in Hillary Clinton to be president. It's that simple. It really is that simple. And that's our show. Don't let these progressives push you around. There is a move going on in this country where those who do not think left are finally done with apologizing, finally getting done with worrying about how people feel and standing up for beliefs instead of bowing down to them. Take care of yourself. Keep that movement going. Because ideas are what matter, feelings change. Until next week, the Lord says the same. Please take care of yourselves, take care of your family. Talk to you. Good night.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.